All right, here we are after the mobile dating conference. We're in Los Angeles, and I'm joined by Steve Dean of Courtland Brooks, and I'm Mark Brooks from Courtland Brooks. And we do not have a Mark Lesnick because he's actually packing down the conference right now. So it's you and me to do a roundup of the conference. So what's your overall impressions?
Oh man, I think in terms of the reviews I was writing after each one, the thing that came out a number of times was like the numbers that I was seeing from these companies were eerily honest. Like I wasn't expecting so many speakers to just be super upfront about exactly what their numbers are looking like and what the trends are that they're seeing. You know, like they're saying it in a way that's almost like not brutally honest, but it made me feel like there was no bullshit. It was very straightforward, and it made me feel pretty good to be able to like walk up to the manager and be like, okay, I respect what you just did there. I respect that you like gave, like it was super valuable as a viewer to be able to get access to the kind of data that otherwise would probably go unreported, and not just about individual companies, but also a lot of market data that it would have been my job to collect it otherwise. And the fact that they already did all the work and they presented it very cleanly, I was super happy with it all.
I think there's been a realization over the years. From the first internet dating conference in 2004, everybody was kind of standoffish, and then after a few beers, we realized we're in this game together, and there's something to be gained from learning and sharing with the folks. I mean, this is somewhat representative of the entire industry, but this is a proportion of the entire industry globally. So we had quite a good representation. We had Jiayuan represented, we had companies from Europe, we had companies from USA, predominantly American, of course, and this is the mobile dating conference. So we didn't have matchmakers at this show. This is Miami is the full industry plus matchmakers plus premium international dating. It's everybody, but this is entirely focused on mobile dating. So should we go through some of the sessions, some of the things that you learned from each session? I was impressed with Tushar's session from Verizon. He kicked off in the morning, and one of the things I learned from that was the amount of time that you take to respond to a notification is very critical, and sometimes the technology can add a delay, and that's very deadly. So 3 seconds without a progress indicator is deadly. You've lost someone. 8 seconds with a progress indicator on a notification, and you might be able to keep them if you're going to show someone's typing. But you know, we were discussing later on about using a hybrid wrapper for lowering the cost of doing applications and improving the turnaround time, and not having to reapply to the Apple Store. So Alex, actually, just to jump ahead a little bit, on Friday today, Alex from Snap Interactive revealed that they've moved to a hybrid service using Ionic, and that's actually very impactful for the industry to realize that quite a major player has actually gone the fast turn route, the inexpensive route of using a hybrid, using Ionic, and actually just having a wrap around the app rather than having native app and having multiple versions for Apple and Android. So that was quite a precedent, and we got into the details of that. So that dovetailed with that.
It was surprising to see that could be done. Like previously, when I actually downloaded their app while he was talking, and I was looking through it, I was like, oh well, you can notice a slight difference between hybrid and native, but it's only a slight difference. It used to be appalling. It used to be the case that like you'd see constant bugs, constant app crashes. You'd see, I mean, it wasn't fun to play on or date on, even as recently as like a year and a half ago. And looking at it now, I'm thinking, okay, well, there could be some potential here. Clearly, it's working for them. I don't know if I think it's something that now that we see the ability of these hybrid interfaces to be able to capture a lot of the more expected interactive paradigms that users are getting comfortable with. If you can see that happening in the hybrid space, then yeah, it's totally worthwhile.
And we had a really eye-opening presentation from Soda. So one of the things I got from that was that the average dating user has 1.33 dating apps on the phone, which seems rather low. I'm sure. How many dating apps have you got on your phone?
Right now, I think it's about 56.
56.
But I'm not the
you're
average
definitely
dating user.
You're in the 99th percentile, I think.
Yeah, my guess that I cited during my talk was I think it was the average user would have just over 1, maybe 2, And if you segment that by demographic, I highly suspect that it's skewing low simply because of the 30 plus demographic who's on mostly either just Match or just eHarmony. And chances are, like, they don't need another app because the cost of them having to pay attention to all these other apps is like way too much. Like dealing with like 3 or 4 people in a week is plenty for them. Whereas the younger generation, I guarantee you that they are definitely pulling that number up. That 1.33, like that 0.33 is just from the younger demographics who are, you know, the average New Yorker. If you talk to anyone under 30 in New York, it's almost guaranteed that they have they usually have like up to 3 to 5 apps. Chances are it's going to be either like the OkCupid, the Tinder, Coffee Meets Bagel, Hinge, or Happen. Those are pretty much guaranteed. And Bumble too. You can't find a user in New York who hasn't tried at least 3 of those 6. And usually they keep them on their phone for as long as it's relevant.
So that company's Startup, and I was very impressed with the data that they were pulling. We're going to start running their data on Online Personals Watch, so rather than reciting some of it, keep an eye on OPW, and you'll see that there'll be a new data source for us along with SimilarWeb. SimilarWeb are awesome. They gave us a whole bunch of data, and again, so I presented in the morning, and rather than, I'm just going to take a look at OPW and see some of the data there. So I give a wrap-up of the industry. Then we had Unravel. Were you in the Unravel session? No? Okay. So they're basically, they've got a new app that they're working on. There's a fellow who works with Gaia, and they're rolling out a new app called Unravel. And the way it works is you kind of unravel a profile. You get into a game. They've gamified the experience of dating, and they wanted our feedback on it. And essentially, a user goes in, they answer questions. When they answer questions of trivia around about the person that they're looking at, then more of that person's profile gets revealed. It gets unraveled. You unravel a person. So that was quite inspirational. I think the app was a bit too complicated, really. It was a bit too...
I haven't tried that one.
It's not out yet. No, it's they want us our feedback on it, which is very nice of them to reveal. MeetMe presented. So yeah, we had MeetMe. What's interesting about MeetMe, they're a public company, of course, and they revealed 95% of their revenues are being made from advertising, and the numbers are looking good. They're moving up. Yeah,
I've been a user for about 2.5 years, and it is the most that I've seen more ads on MeetMe than any other dating app, and they've been, you know, trying to innovate with like different types of display ads, and the way in which they display, how they do it. Like, it's just, I've noticed a lot more experimentation with ads from them than a lot of other companies, and so I'm not surprised to see that that's where their revenue is coming from.
Yeah. We had Diverse, which was amazing to have Diverse presenting here. They've been coming through the conference for quite a while, and again, the reveal on the numbers was amazing. One of the things that was a takeaway was in Japan, they spend $24 a month on apps, and in the USA, versus the USA, it's $6.61 a month on apps, and Korea's $12.83. So basically, the Japanese
apps, right?
Spend a ton of money on
all apps, not just dating apps.
Yeah, this is countrywide, and they revealed the highest used group is girls in high school who spend 7 hours a day on phones. In general, just 7 hours a day on smartphones, which sounds to me like a health problem.
it will soon be one.
Yeah.
For sure.
The Japanese online dating market, they assessed at $250 million a year, which seemed rather low. Compared to America? I mean, America's at 10 times that, but the population is twice as much.
Yeah.
Why is Japan not spending more money? They just revealed they spend a lot of money on advertising. That seems very conservative. I think they're trying to not inspire us to go into the Japanese
don't they
market.
just not have many young people? Comparatively.
I'm not sure. I mean, hugely, I mean, from the days of Docomo, I mean, they're hugely way ahead of us.
And the most common articles I'm seeing coming out of Japan are like, the youth are not dating, the youth are not having sex, they're not engaging with one another, they're engaging with their phones. So I'm not surprised that, you know, using an app to meet someone is not as prevalent as it might be here, or spending money to invest in your dating prospects. It's like...
And the sociological trends are really different from the USA. There's a huge trend toward not being married. There's some stats that they gave. 50% of 20-year-olds have never been a couple. I'm not sure how they identify as a couple, but to me that means that 50% of 20-year-olds have never been in a long-term relationship.
That's high.
50%?
That's really high.
So there's some real interesting sociological trends in Japan. And we had Spark Networks present. We had John Voltura, who heads marketing. I got a ton of notes. This was really fascinating. Awesome they came out. So they made some big changes. They're launching Cross Paths, which is their Christian dating application. And they're reaching out to parishes, and so they've got an alternative kind of influencer-based method of getting out and doing marketing. They've cut back on the TV advertising seriously, and they're really promoting JSwipe. I'd say that LA seems to be the hub of the Christian community, whereas New York seems to be the hub of the Jewish community.
Yeah.
And they revealed that on JDate, 60% of the Jewish Americans have been on JDate in the USA.
Wow.
They're monetizing from super swipes and add-ons. Do you remember the super swipes? I'm not quite sure what that was.
Is it the equivalent of a Tinder super like?
I guess so, yeah.
And those are really powerful. I will admit that I've spent my fair share of money on getting access to Tinder super likes, because they are, like, when I look at the people that I message most frequently, it's usually the people who I've either super liked or who have super liked me. It's a very strong marker of intent.
Yeah. We had ScarDate present. Yeah, they're doing quite a lot of microtransactions. They showed a survey that they did where they were tracking people who were using, or partners that had started dating apps. And some of them have started using just subscriptions, some started using both subscription and microtransactions, and others that have just done microtransactions. And they show a preponderance of their partners shifting towards doing microtransactions only. Yeah. Even when they were doing both, they'd end up shifting towards doing microtransactions.
Interesting. I put together a little graphic for my presentation where I took every major, maybe the top 50 apps, and I categorized them as either doing display ads, microtransactions, subscriptions, or purchasing the app itself, like having to pay to download the app. And the most common buckets that were being filled were a fusion of in-app payments for subscriptions and in-app payments for microtransactions.
We had Grindr. Monty, who's the VP of product, came out, and do you remember anything?
Yeah, I thought it was cool that he was showing how incredibly data-centric their approach to design is, and how much research goes into every single decision that they make. So they're not just willy-nilly saying, oh, we think users might want this. They're saying, what exactly are users currently doing? How can we increase that by X percentage, or decrease that kind of behavior? What would make users feel happier on the app, and how do you do that without ostracizing or abandoning users who are currently using the app and getting a huge amount of value from it? And so the way they do that, it's so scientific, and it's unbelievable to see how much rigorous science goes into every single decision they make on the design front. A lot of times you think of designers as the ones who get to be super creative, but Monty said, he's like, my job's not that creative. It's more, I just have to be able to read and analyze data, so much data, in order to make sure that every decision we make is incredibly, relevant to the global user base, not just to the people who, anytime you incorporate your individual bias, you miss out on the larger trends and bigger pools of data that are available to a company that's now internationally focused.
Did you sit on the affiliate marketing panel? A lot of takeaways from that.
I showed up for the tail end of it.
Yeah. So some really interesting ideas. A bunch of tools that they mentioned, like SEO Quake, URL Profiler, Pro Blogger for good advice and good content for affiliates, SEM Rush. These were tools that were mentioned and recommended during that panel. I made a note of. And they also warn again, you've got to keep an eye out for affiliates that will try the "is this a scam" link. So these links tend to get bubbled up, and then what they'll do is they'll explain, is this a scam? Yes, no, and then they'll just push them out to a regular affiliate link after coming to the conclusion that no, it's not a link. But it's still, these tend to get bumped up in Google because they get a high degree of click-throughs, and this is kind of a renegade affiliate tactic. You've got to watch out for. You've got to watch out also for the loyalty and couponware, which what essentially happens is you end up double paying. They're hijacking payments on affiliate. Recommended Majestic SEO as well, and Opt-in Munster, and Ahrefs for monitoring social shares. There was an interesting tactic that Adam Reamer brought up, which I thought was quite brilliant. So actually find out what senators are particularly interested in, what issues they're focused on, and produce an infographic, email their chief of staff, see if you can get them to post it, because then you can get the .gov and .edu, you can end up getting .gov and .edu links back to it, which is really good for SEO, of course. We had Anders Wallace come through, and he's an academic. What we try and do at each conference is have at least one academic come through and give an overview of what they've been working on in their particular position. So he's interested in doing improv games and encouraging people to talk to each other, kind of let their guard down, kind of be more authentic by involving themselves in improv games, which is actually, I like the idea of that. What should we take away from that?
I mean, I think it's catching on. It's something, I've been doing that in my salons that I co-host every other week in New York and San Francisco. And so I've found that improv games are an incredibly powerful force for getting people to loosen up a little bit, getting them to actually communicate authentically, getting them to be challenged to think on their feet rather than just coming up with prepackaged scripts for what to say or do. Improv forces you to constantly be dynamic, and I think that that's always going to be helpful in any dating scenario and also in friendship, in life. You know, anytime you can respond more dynamically to a challenging situation, you're better off. I wanted to talk about Jiayuan, because I found there were a couple of really interesting takeaways I got from that talk by Shang. It's one of I think, formerly the biggest dating app in China, and then it actually just sold to another small, I don't know if it was a smaller dating app, but it was one that I had gotten a funding.
It's actually the number 2. So what happened is Buy Hair managed to raise $230 million, buy out Jiayuan, and now they've merged. This must be of great concern to JedAI, which is the number 3 dating service over there. It was interesting, the valuations in comparison to Momo. They said that Jiayuan was doing $100 million a year. That's a $230 million valuation on that. Momo, meanwhile, is also, it used to be a dating app. They have about the same level of revenues. They've kind of shifted more towards being a social network come social discovery. And, it's very, but you put me onto Momo originally, actually, a few years back.
Yep. And I told you it was going to be big.
It's a whole different experience in China, though. I mean, you can do so much within Momo. And they've shifted from dating to these all social networking. Consequently, their valuation, despite having the same level of revenues, was 10x. It's a $2 billion valuation in China. So that's an incentive for, if you think about it, Tinder. And we discussed this on the final panel.
Yep.
That's an incentive for Tinder to move more towards. They have described themselves as social discovery. You kind of wonder about that. Is that really the future for Tinder? Is that where they're going to head? But let's talk about Jiayuan. You've got some insight on that. I wasn't in the Jiayuan session, unfortunately.
It was interesting hearing about some of their revenue numbers, because you mentioned 40% of their revenue doesn't come from the app itself. It doesn't come from anything to do with the app. It comes from matchmaking. So they actually have hundreds of facilities around the country and possibly around the world for doing matchmaking for individual daters. And so you have people who are turned off by having to struggle in the app market trying to find people, and they're paying anywhere from $5,000 to $10,000 just to be set up on 8 different dates. And so they're making 40% of their total revenue is coming from these little matchmaking companies peppered throughout the country that are able to take the users who are fed up with dating and they want to just have a matchmaker give them that personalized attention. He also mentioned that some tiny, tiny fraction of the actual men that are on these apps have any money. And so most of the design and development is going toward the people who actually have the money they can pay, and it's just a small fraction of the market. Mm-hmm. And it was interesting to think about it that way, because a lot of the design is going toward getting the ability for people to spend their money, giving them. I think if you see, I forget who it was that was doing this. It might have been Momo. They're basically fusing social into dating, and so you have the ability for people to follow users' live video streams and become their donors, and basically just throw your money at users as much as you can. And so when you have these people with a lot of money, a lot of expendable income, they're able to, these dating apps and these social apps are able to basically capitalize like crazy on that and say, oh, you like this girl that you've been following for the last couple of weeks on her live feed, why not tip her an extra couple $1,000 and we'll take a couple percentage points of that. So you have people just throwing so much money into that, and that's where a lot of the revenue is being made. It's in these live video, not just like user creating a video and then hitting submit. It's actually like people with following. So almost like the Twitch model, where you have people come in and like they're either gaming or they're just eating food. He mentioned that, like people just going into the video stream, hitting record in real time and just starting to eat or talk about their lives, and you have cult followings of hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people, and they're all donating and contributing to just watching this person continue to do whatever they do. It's amazing.
Well, I guess I missed that session. I'm gonna get hold of Shang and see if we can get his presentation and bubble up some more of the findings on Online Festivals Watch.
If he makes that presentation available, that was the stats that he was pulling up, and also like the gender ratio, and how that's been changing, and how much that's absolutely sucked for the men of China. It's completely insane when you look at the numbers. Yeah. He pulled all of those out.
So that concludes our roundup of the Mobile Dating Conference in Los Angeles. We've got a great new venue here. This has been, SLS was beautiful, but this is even more beautiful. Very serenic surroundings here. I think we're going to be here next year. So I'm Mark Brooks from Courtland Brooks, and this is Steve Dean from Courtland Brooks. We help internet dating companies grow. We've got a team of 17, and we do strategy, PR, and business development. Thank you so much for your time, and see you next time.
See ya.